Hello, beautiful souls. It's Saria here, talking to you about neurospicy communication. Why? Well, in the last year, I've had some people tell me that I didn't communicate right, that I'm too direct, and I really just felt so misunderstood. And it's been a long journey of realizing, I am perfectly, wonderfully neurospicy. And there's a difference to the communication. It doesn't mean that it's bad, it's just different. But we live in a very neurotypical designed world, and a lot of people judge neurospicy communication. So I wanted to share with you a little bit about it. So those of you who are have neurodivergent capacities, or families who are neurodivergent, instead of judging yourselves or others, will understand, oh, it's a different style. It's kind of like speaking Greek or Latin. It's like, no, Latin isn't wrong. It's just not Greek. And that's the same as neurospicy communication. It's not wrong. It's just different. You know, I live in England in a sweet village where people are sweet and nice. And before I used to think, is my directness because I'm South African and we can be a bit more direct? But then I grew up in a family that wasn't necessarily like that, and I felt different. And it's taken me a while to realize this is a lot to do with being neurospicy. So I want to, if you've got any questions about your communication style, or I'd love to, chat with you about it, share in the comments. But I want to go through a few things that are neurospicy. I have been no contact with my mother for about 10 years, but I'm doing my autism diagnosis. And so I asked her, because obviously she's the one who has known me, and graciously, even though I haven't spoken with her for 10 years, she filled in the form. And one thing in the form that it said was, she does not like small talk. She will leave the room. She will walk away from the conversation. She will find a way to get away from it. She hates small talk. And I remember just saying, why are you talking about those people? Or just ask them directly what they think. Don't talk about them behind their back. Just go to their face and ask them. It would get me so riled up. I just utterly hate small talk, or talk about the weather. Sometimes if the weather's stormy, then it's interesting. So the funny thing is about this, so anybody else like that? Do you hate small talk? Remember that the majority of you are probably here on my Restoring Love page. And if you are, then that's public. But if you're in one of my private groups, then if you're in Restore, then it's private. Okay, so the first main thing is we don't like small talk, and we don't like the sort of sweet talk where we can, in a sort of general society, neurotypical society, people might pretend that they're feeling something, but with folk who are neurodiverse, we can feel the undercurrent really strongly, and we talk to the undercurrent rather than the mishmash of small talk. So to the person who's doing the small talk of, oh, how are you? So good to see you. But underneath is all this sort of squirminess. Somebody who is neurodiverse will talk to the squirminess and go, you look uptight. What's wrong? Because they like deep, interesting, special, weird, different communication. Because that fakeness, when somebody is being that superficial, bypassy niceness, and these other feelings are inside, folk who are neurodiverse can feel that. And when they can feel something, because their sensory awareness is a lot more acute, it's really hard for them to have a real conversation with that bomb or mine right there that they can feel is exploding underneath everything. And they're like, what is that bomb that's there? And they prod it and it might explode because people are not used to that realness and rawness and depth. And then other people would go, this is so weird. Like one friend of mine introduced me to people and said, this is my weird friend. And I found it quite amusing. And they were a bit perplexed, but weird because I will just speak directly to things. And that quality is both in autism and ADHD. In ADHD, folk will just interrupt and share what they see because there's less impulse control. Whereas in dyslexia, there's people often who are dyslexic think in images rather than words. And so they will, if somebody's feeling something, they might see it. This also happens with autism, where you can't necessarily see the words coming in, so you'll see it as an image. Some people who are autistic don't see images in their mind at all. But they can feel, or they might see a color instead of a word. And they have to interpret that and then make it into communication. So frequently, if we go back to dyslexia, people who are dyslexic will see things in images or shapes or colors, and then they have to take time to translate that into words. So their communication is often goes around the bush describing different things while their mind catches up with them of what they're trying to say. Whereas with autism and ADHD, frequently their mind is going so fast and presenting so much that they might jumble over words. Whereas with dyslexia, they are going around things. And so folk who I know who are dyslexic will tell long stories with and then I bumped into so-and-so and they were wearing this. And it was really significant for them because they notice more detail-orientated things that are physical, kinesthetic, and embodied than folk who are neurotypical. All right, I'm going to pause and see if there are any questions. Somebody says relatable, and they hate that. All right. So often for folk who are neurodiverse, there's so many things happening in the brain, and then they get overwhelmed and they shut down. So for example, when my kids were small, I would notice that if I said, you need to put your shorts on, your shirt on, your socks on, your shoes on, I might come in and find them with nothing on because there were too many instructions at once. And it's kind of like the information, often I see things like as images in front of me. So I was chatting to my son and my mind just felt like it was full. And so I saw his words coming out of his mouth as kind of like a dark color, like a cloud. And my mind was full. And so I could see the words coming out of his mouth. I didn't hear them. I could see the words coming and they were coming up towards me. And my head was full. So I collected all the words in like a cloud. And then because he speaks really fast when he's excited, and it was too fast for my brain. So I held all the words in a cloud, and then I said to him, just hold on. And I slowly put the words into my ears. Now that is weird, but I could really get how with neurodiversity, I assume that I am ADHD, autistic, and dyslexic. And that is a mix of a autistic and dyslexic thing where you see things in images and outside of you when your brain isn't functioning, it accesses a different part of you. And so I could see all the words and then slowly pull the thread of the sentence and feed it into me, and then I could respond. It was the most bizarre thing, but sometimes my brain works like that. And before I used to go, gosh, this is so weird. And now I just go, it's so lovely that I see like if I don't understand something, like somebody was being nice to me, or no, they were sharing nice words, but their behavior was being really horrible. And I couldn't understand it. I kept going, what's happening? And then I opened my eyes and saw this honey-coated penis flying in front of me just across the lounge. And I was like, oh, okay, what he's doing is a double bind where his words are sweet like honey, but actually he's being a dick to me. And then he was like, oh, you're all sexualizing. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm insulting you. I'm calling you a honey-coated dick, that you're being sugar-coated and nice, but actually you're being an asshole to me. That was the end of that friendship. But because for both of us, I didn't want to be treated with where I didn't have that. And that's where the communication really struggles sometimes between people, because we talk in very different ways. My son found a study this morning that he sent to me that it said that if you have a group of neurotypical people in a room, they understand and the communication flows really easily. If you have a group of people who are neurodiverse in a room, they understand each other and speak really easily. But if you swap it and you have some people who are neurodiverse with neurotypical, the conversation is quite jarring and they don't feel as understood by each other. So often there has been like research when people who are neurodiverse are studied with neurotypical people who say they've got no empathy, they don't understand things. No, the reality is they do have empathy, but they can connect and relate to people who are similar to them, who are neurotypical, who like deep, interesting, creative, got special interests, info dump, have parallel conversations where you're talking about one thing and we're responding with something else, but we both understand each other. I have a friend who is neurodiverse and she came around, and as she arrived, I just went for half an hour and spoke, and she sat and listened and went through it. And then she spoke to me for an hour and did the same. And then we both felt like we'd righted everything in the world. But that info dumping is not something that's viewed as a positive trait in neurotypical people, where people will say, you know, that parallel conversation isn't right. You need to have turns, one sentence and then one sentence. But actually, other people work differently, and it's completely okay to relate in the way that honors you, rather than feel that you're always wrong because of how you relate. Because where I grew up in my family, I was treated like that I was wrong because I didn't communicate like everybody else. So we often, folk who are neurospicy will often mishear things. If we can see somebody's communication is not matching their behavior, we feel that internally in ourselves and can take that personally and feel like this rejection sensitive dysphoria, where that pain that somebody's not expressing, we experience as something against us, which is very typical because throughout childhood, we've been judged or shamed or made wrong for who we are, where people have been smiley and nice, but then punishing us. And so when we see that energy now in an adult where they're being smiley and nice, but then backstabbing or going behind our backs, it feels so intense. And that rejection sensitive dysphoria is felt as physical pain, where our skin like burns inside, our heart races, that we can feel that as a slight into us that makes us feel unloved, uncared for. And so what's really helpful in speaking to somebody who is neurospicy is being really direct and real, so that you are aligned with what you are feeling, rather than being bypassy or fake, or pretending to feel something when actually you feel something else. Because those of us who are neurospicy can often feel what you're feeling, But because you're not communicating it and we expect that everybody will be real with us, then we experience that as something wrong with us rather than it's just what you're feeling. All right. Sometimes people often judge folk who are neurospicy because they feel, oh, they don't have any empathy. The reality is that frequently folk, especially who are autistic, have greater empathy than neurotypical people. In studies, they've seen that if there was a moment where somebody was embarrassed, the person who's autistic actually felt more embarrassed than the actual person did. If they did it on a rating scale, the person who was autistic felt way more embarrassment. But what often happens with somebody who is autistic is that they feel things so deeply that it becomes overwhelming. And because they get overwhelmed, the dorsal vagus nerve clicks in, they feel immobilized, and then they can't express that empathy. They're feeling it. They're feeling what the other person is feeling, but they can't empathize with the person because they've shut down, because the emotion is so large and so intense for them. So frequently people share, there's so many studies and things that say folk aren't empathetic because they're not necessarily expressing it, but they're not expressing it frequently because it feels so intense that their head gets jumbled. They can't actually find the words to say, wow, I really feel for you. I can see that was really embarrassing or upsetting because the emotion is so large that it shuts down their brain. Another weird thing that happens often in our family, all three of us, is that sometimes we use the wrong words, or we can't find the word we're trying to say, or we stumble over a word. Like the other day, we were discussing like what we make in porridge. And my daughter said, oh, I really love it when we grate carrots into porridge. And my son and I were like, oh, carrots, that's interesting. She was thinking in her head apples, but the word carrot came out and we said, not carrots. And she heard us saying apples and said, yes, carrots. And then later we were talking about it and we said, why do you want carrots? No, I said apples. But we both heard her say carrots. Because sometimes the words with dyslexia, words just get transposed. For me, yellow and red have always been transposed, and I have to pause and go, no, that's actually red, not yellow. So it can get really confusing. And research has shown that being married to somebody who is dyslexic, for instance, there are more arguments than in normal families because people use the wrong words, and then people internalize it or interpret it as how it's been spoken, but actually what they're saying they don't quite mean because they've got the wrong words, and it becomes really confusing. And like with my daughter, she really believed that she was saying apples, but she was saying carrots repetitively in the conversation, but she was meaning apples. And while we can laugh at it, in the moment, we were really confused. And if it's something significant, it can cause a lot of arguments and challenges because what you're saying isn't necessarily always what you're trying to say because the words come out wrongly. So that becomes really challenging. And there has been some research into relationships with folk who are dyslexic. And partly one of the reasons that they get divorced is because of communication failings. My daughter and I have been thinking of writing a book on communicating with somebody who's dyslexic because we've got a lot of patience because we all have different neurodiversities in our family. But if somebody is dyslexic in a family of neurotypical people and they have these idiosyncrasies, it's really challenging for them to be able to express themselves. So part of that is that instructions can get jumbled. And so if we say, hey, this needs to happen, then somebody might do what they've heard, but they haven't heard it correctly. And then to other people, it looks deliberate, that they're not listening on purpose. But in reality, our minds just twist things, and it's frustrating. The other part of that is that if you say something in like a figure of speech, people who are autistic especially, and sometimes ADHD, will take it literally, but so does dyslexia do that at times. And so you have to really watch the words that you're using so you're communicating effectively. I think that I've shared all that I have written. I can see that I've written a few things that I'm repeating on my notes. But for me, it's been fascinating to realize that the issues that I've had and the reasons that I've been judged are simply neurospicy communication things, like I'm too direct, or I say things that are too vulnerable, or I overshare, or I say things that are too real, and people don't want that. They want sugar-coated niceness, and that isn't how my brain operates. So if you are neurospicy or you are neurotypical, I hope this has helped you to understand and reduce the level of shame in yourself, knowing this is a different way of communicating. It's not wrong. It's not bad. It is just how it is. And I hope in time that we will research people who are neurospicy as that is a form of communication, not as something wrong that needs to fit into a neurotypical world, but it's a different way of communicating. If you're somebody who is a neurospicy and you've been judged and made wrong and always felt like you don't fit because of who you are and you're weird, in my Restore membership, we are having a month of neurospicy support. And if you would like to join us, we would love to have you. Let me find the link there. So you can come and join us on that. It's going to be an amazing month where we look at different capacities in neurodiversity, and we look at how you can work with your own energy rather than always feeling like you are wrong, like you are not getting it right, so that you can be supported to be able to thrive as you are, rather than always feeling ashamed of who you are and trying to fit in and be different for other people. All right. I hope that's helpful. I'm curious what you've got out of it. And I am excited to do the Neurospicy month together. I know. I saw it on TikTok, and then weirdly, two of my friends in this summer have also been diagnosed with autism and ADHD. And they've also been using that. And so it's quite exciting. And I think what I like about neurodiversity seems like a very big, long word. And my daughter's like, why do they have to use big, long words? Whereas neurospicy sounds like it's something that is special and extra, rather than something that's different or wrong. You know what I mean? So I quite like neurospicy. But there's a part of me, that this sort of autistic part, autism is so much about black and white thinking and what is right and wrong. And I can feel this autistic part sometimes when I write neurospicy going, no, you have to write neurodivergent. And then this part of me that's ADHD, that's like spontaneity and impulsive and different. It's like, no, I love neurospicy. And so having those two components inside my own brain is a complete mindfuck, where these two parts, where autism is like, these are the rules and this is how it has to be. And then ADHD is, What are the rules so that I can break them? And it's just this complete mind fuck in my head where these two parts of me are arguing. I have a friend who I often share the challenges of having these two parts in my brain, and I'm just laughing at myself, where I'll say to myself, okay, come on, you have to get up and go to bed. And I'm like, don't tell me what to do. And these two parts that argue inside of my head, and I can now laugh at them rather than get disturbed by them. I hope that that's helped you, lovely people. And I look forward to seeing you in the Neurospicy month. I'll be starting that next week. So I'm really looking forward to supporting all of you who want to come and join us. All right. I'm sending you love, and message me if you have any questions about the Neurospicy month. All right. Love to you. Bye-bye.